Good afternoon, everyone. It's just 2 o'clock now. I'm going to give it till 2:03 to just give people time to log on before we get started. Hi, Chris and Jen. Did you guys want to test your mics?
Hello, Jen and Jen.
Good morning.
Chris and
Good
Jen.
afternoon.
And
We
everybody
are
on the call.
here, present and accounted for. Thanks everybody for joining us. This is we've had great participation in these meetings, and we really appreciate everybody's time, and they're super informative. So thanks for joining us. I'm going to mute myself, Jen.
Yep, we'll just wait one more minute before we get started. Okay, we hit the magic 2:03. So I'm going to get started. Welcome, everyone, and thank you so much for joining this afternoon. My name is Jennifer Bourret, and I am the Mobility Transition Project Specialist, which means that I am working on the transition to Blue Cross and the Recycle program. We also have Jennifer Moore, who is the Director of AADL, and Chris Perkins is also here, who is the Business Manager. And just there is 3 Jennifers at AADL. So the other Jennifer is Jennifer Mabagat Chan, who is the Mobility Manager. So we really appreciate you taking the time to learn about these changes. Your questions have been invaluable to us to help us adapt and ensure that we get all the information to you. Please ensure that you put any questions in the chat box, and we will answer them at the end of the presentation. And all your questions will be put in an upcoming bulletin with the answers. So just review what we've done so far. So session 1 was the overview of the Recycle program held on October 26th, 27th, and November 9th. Bulletin 125 gives you a recording of that to a link of that presentation and the Q&As that came from that session. Session 2 was last week going over the generic spec form and ordering through Recycle. That was on November 23rd and 24th. We do have it recorded, but it's not up yet, so it will be coming in an upcoming bulletin with all the Q&As that came from that session as well. Alberta Blue Cross did an overview of the online health portal on November 15th. Bulletin 124 will give you a link to that session as well as the Q&As that came from that session. So we're kind of keeping Blue Cross as one process and the Recycle as a separate process. So it's 2 things happening here at the same time. So today I'm just going to go over the approved product lists, the changes to the format, what's changed, some product changes, and how it all integrates with the Alberta Blue Cross system. So I'll start with wheelchairs. So when you authorize for a wheelchair in the Blue Cross system, you pick the authorization type. So you search the recycle pool, and if the recycle pool has something available for you, then you would be authorizing for a recycled wheelchair. If you cannot get through anything through the recycle pool, then you would order the specific type and order new. So these are the different categories, and I'll go through these more specifically. And an authorization is also just a confirmation that you've assessed the client, you've determined that they need this type of wheelchair, but the ordering and the details of that specific wheelchair come later when the authorizer and client and vendor figure out what they need to order. So it's a little bit different than the current system with AADL, where your authorization is also an order. So this is a look at the Category A chairs. So you can see there is now 6 chairs on the program. We removed the Energy Plus, the Gold, the Lightstream, and the 9000 XT. You'll also notice that the upgrade option is not listed here anymore. It's under grants, which I'll show you in a minute. So when you're ordering a Category A chair, it would either be, you can see it listed here, the authorization type would either be a Category A if you're ordering new, or it would be the recycle authorization if you're getting it through recycle. You'll also notice that the quantity and frequency is now 1 in 5 years for all wheelchairs. But the same policy applies, that the chair, just because the 5 years is up, does not mean that a client should get a new chair. You still should be changing a chair because it's no longer cost effective to do so, or the client, it's no longer suitable for that client. You just wouldn't have to do a QFR after the 5 years. Sorry, I'll just also then go back to the Category A's here. There's also an eligibility summary form. We used to have sort of a generic one for all wheelchairs. Now they've been divided up into different categories. So when you're ordering Category A, you would fill out the eligibility summary for a Category A chair and upload that with your authorization. So for Category B, the eligibility summary form that you would use would be the one for Category B chairs. For products, we removed the Lightstream. And again, the upgrades for B chairs are not listed here. They're in another section. Otherwise, everything's pretty much the same. B and C chairs do not go through the recycle part right now. So you don't go through the recycle vendor for B and C at this time, but the chairs do still need to be recycled back into AADL program. They are still government-owned chairs, so they do need to be returned. For Category C, we removed the Catalyst 5 and the Panthera. Just for your information, the Tylite Aero Z, the 396, is just on recall right now. So there was a bulletin that just came out giving information on that recall. So it's not off the program, but just to highlight that there was a recall for that right now. And if you're ordering a C chair, you would fill out the eligibility summary for Category C. And then here you can see all the grant chairs grouped in one section. So if you're ordering a grant chair, that would be your authorization type. So you can see that listed here. The quantity and frequency is also 1 in 5, which has changed. But here's the information on those. The process is still basically the same. We've just grouped it in a different place on the APLs. You do need to complete the eligibility summary for grants. And this is the only other form besides the client declaration that the client actually has to sign. So we had that previously where we had the declaration that the client signed, and now we've changed that to an eligibility summary form just to keep the language the same. But they do need to sign that because they have to agree that they're owning it, that they recognize that they have to pay for repairs, and that they don't have any choice to appeal or anything that chair in that 5 years. Then this one is the authorization type for Category A, high weight and heavy duty. or recycle. So again, if you're getting this chair through recycle, you would be authorizing a recycle chair. But if you're ordering new, you need to make sure you get the category A high weight, heavy duty authorization type. And you can see here, we've listed the Voyager Plus, the Swift, and the Move, which are also category A chairs, but we've listed them here as well. And you have to make sure you access this authorization type to make sure that you can get the heavy duty options that go with those chairs. So they're listed here again. The codes are the same, but the authorization type needs to be different so that you can add the heavy duty package that those chairs can come with. Then we also have these other 3 chairs that nothing's changed with those chairs on the program, and they already come set up with the heavy duty capacity. You would also complete the eligibility summary for high weight heavy duty form, and that's the one you would upload with your authorization. And then the second part of that same category, heavy duty high weight, is the high weight category. No changes to the products here. These are for clients over 350 pounds. So again, you would fill out the eligibility summary for heavy duty high weight, and that would be your authorization type as well, unless you're getting it through recycle. Then the tilt in space. So there's 2 types of tilt in space, the ones that have the back and headrest that come with it, and the ones that have just the base. So the first type we'll talk about is the one that does come with the headrest and back. And these are classified as category A wheelchairs. So that's the authorization type you would use to access those chairs, unless you're getting it through recycle again. But that's the authorization type. So you would use the eligibility summary for a category A chair if you're getting a tilt with the back and headrest. But if you're getting an adult tilt in space base only, so these ones primarily go through the seating clinic, you would use the authorization stream. You can see here, tilt in space base only. Unless you get it through recycle, you make sure you get this one because it gives the Blue Cross system access to a different funding body of money. So you need to make sure you get the right authorization type. Please note the 321, the Stellar, was discontinued and we've replaced it with the GL. So you need to make sure you're familiar with the updated model that they've put out. We also, sorry, we also removed the Fuse T50. So that's the only other change from the tilt in space base only chairs. Then for pediatrics, these are all grouped together here. Nothing's changed with the products, but there's 3 different categories here. So you would use 3 different eligibility summary forms. So if you're ordering the category A, it would be a category A. So it's all listed here. You can see it here. If you're ordering a B, it would be a category B. And then if you're ordering the tilt, it would be the tilt in space base only. But if you are getting that one through recycle, then it would be a recycled chair. And then the options. So you can see from this page that the heavy duty items are no longer listed here. They're under the heavy duty section, as I showed you. Basically no other changes here except that we added W112 event tray that now can be ordered with the order rather than adding it on afterwards. So it's more economical to do so. Please make sure if you're ordering angle adjustable foot plates that it is justified. It's costing money, and so it shouldn't be ordered if the client doesn't need it. So make sure that you are justifying why the client needs this. Whether you're ordering new or from recycle, you need to make sure that that's client driven and not just something you want to make the chair more flexible. Then for power chairs, so the Sunrise Explorer was discontinued, but the Sunrise has replaced it with the Quickie 500H. So down here, the 971. So it's a slightly different chair. So you can have a look at that one as well, which is now available. We also will be adding the Amy Lohr All Track, which is actually, they manufactured the Explorer, but now they've taken back manufacturing and distributing it. So we need to make sure that get them tendered as a manufacturer. So we're in that process right now. So it's not on the APL right now, but come January 31st, we hopefully will have it on the program. So take a look at those 2 chairs that are now available, will be available on the program. So power chairs are done through the Blue Cross system. They're all prior approval as they currently are, but you would submit everything onto the Blue Cross system as a power wheelchair. And then you would submit the application. The authorization would go in a pending state while it gets adjudicated by AADL. And then you would get a notice from Blue Cross when a decision has been made to let you know that you can go on the system to find out what the decision is. So that would be your authorization for power. And then these are for pediatric because the Explorer came off. And we also removed the Quantum J6 because it was not ordered. So there's only the 2 chairs available for pediatrics. Again, your authorization type is just power wheelchair. But if you need to order tilt on the bottom here, that's also an additional authorization type. So if you're requesting tilt, you would have to put in an authorization for a power chair and for a tilt. And you may just be ordering the tilt if the client already has a power chair and you want to add that, so that you would just do the power tilt. So that's 2 different authorizations. But for the specialty controls here, if you're ordering this, you don't have to do anything with the Blue Cross system. This would just be ordered when you figure out with your vendor what you're going to order, and they would have access to this funding under that power chair authorization. Yeah, I think that's it for power chairs. Okay, I'll switch to lifts. So with the lifts, you will be specifically ordering the product that you want. We do want you to go through Recycle first to order any of the lifts. And if it does work with the client, just like the wheelchairs, they would be able to keep that product. If we don't have anything available in Recycle, then you would order new. So this is just the same listing. We discontinued the Voyager the model was discontinued, so that's off the program. We also added on the bottom here the 344, 47, and 48. So the Arjo Huntley, instead of the Voyager, now has this MS 440, which weighs 14 pounds. We've added the Severia, which weighs 11 pounds, and the Mackworth, which weighs 10 pounds. So if you're looking at the overhead lifts, have a look at these as possible options for your clients. And then portable floor lifters, we removed the Human Care FL180 and the Goldman GL5, but otherwise everything's the same on here as well. And then slings, just note the authorization types when you're ordering these on the Blue Cross system. So it tells you here, and the quantity and frequency is 2 and 4 years. If you need to order the heavy duty or custom slings, it is a prior approval. So you would use a different authorization type. This would go into a pending mode until it's approved on the system. So just always pay attention to these authorization types and groups. Okay, switch to beds. So ECO has the contract for beds. It's a separate contract than the recycle contract that they also have. Remember that clients, to be eligible for beds, need to either be in bed 80% of the time or are palliative. Just a couple of notes I just want to point out with common mistakes that are made with beds. If your client is over 6 feet tall, please make sure that you order the longer mattress here, the L211. I'm just going to switch to the next page, and you can also see that there's the frame extension. So if your client's over 6, they probably will need to have the extensions. They can't be added onto a bed. Just like if you make a mistake and want to add the extensions, it can't be done. The whole bed has to be returned and has to be set up with the extensions on them. So make sure you keep that in mind when you're ordering right off the bat. The other thing I'm just going back to the first page, the underlay, you need to decide whether or not you're going to order the regular mattress, or if the client has wounds or a history of wounds, you may want to order the underlay and then order an overlay in category E, which is a benchmark item. So like getting a ROHO insert or something that you would put on top of the underlay. So keep that in mind when you're ordering beds and mattresses, that you really look at the wounds history on the client and determine whether or not that's something they need. And just note for the accessories for beds, they all have different groupings and you can see them all here. So that's how you would order them. Pediatric walkers and standing frames are the three items that are recycle. And so this is just a sample of pediatric recycle equipment. We do want you to go through the recycle vendor first. So you would use the generic spec form for large equipment for accessing the recycle pool. And if they have something available and it works with the client, then they would be able to keep it. If not, you would order new. And so you can see the authorization type is pediatric standing frames. The group is adaptive standard. There's no change to the programs. Just a policy change though, you used to be able to order if the client grew without having to do a QFR. But with Blue Cross, you will still need to do a QFR now if you're under the four-year quantity and frequency limit, because the Blue Cross system can't differentiate whether somebody's changed or whether they've grown. So we still need to go through the QFR process. So this is just the first page. The other pages are still the same. And then mobile standing frames. Just remember that the client needs to be 7 years old or older. And they can't have both a mobile stander and a walker, so they can have one or the other. You would request this through the recycle vendor again with the generic spec form. And then you notice that the group is different with the mobile adaptive stander when you're ordering it through Blue Cross. Again, the QFR would be needed. We did remove the Moxie and the Snug Seat Gator as they were discontinued models. So just before I go on to my next topic, I just want to make reference. So for lifts, beds, and pediatric recycle, those ones you actually submit the specific product numbers, and you need to make sure that you notify the vendor when you've done an authorization, because before, when you did a Blue Cross system, or sorry, when you did a 1250 form with AADL, sorry, I lost my train of thought. My dog was barking. Fun of working from home. What was I saying? I completely lost my train of thought.
You were talking about the specific order for beds and lifters, like the items specifically being ordered versus just putting in the generic request, I think, is where you were headed.
Okay, yes, okay. Yeah, so for these items, you are specific with the item that you want. So you actually use the catalog numbers when you're ordering, whereas for wheelchairs, you just use the authorization type. And then the vendor is the one that claims the specifics for wheelchairs of the model numbers and that kind of thing. Okay. Oh, and that was the other thing, sorry. Completely got to go back now. So you have to make sure though with authorizations to Blue Cross that you notify the vendor that the authorization is there, because they don't have e-business anymore. So when you send a 1250 or 1251 to AADL, when we entered into the system, it automatically generates in the e-business, so the vendors actually can see that there's an order there because they were vendor specific. But with Blue Cross, authorizations are not vendor specific, and so the vendor would not know that there's an authorization there unless you tell them. So please make sure that you communicate with the vendors that you've got an authorization there for them to fill. And please make sure you use date of birth on all your correspondence with the vendors, because they need that with Blue Cross. And then the gate trainers, again, use the recycle vendor first. and they can only have a walker or a mobile standing frame. Otherwise, the products are all the same here, just different group here. Walkers Pediatric would be your group. So just a reminder for recycle ins, please make sure that you contact Eco Medical Edmonton or Calgary. You can do that on behalf of your client or give the information to the clients for them to contact them. Please make sure that you include the client name, PHN, and their date of birth. Like I said, we need that for all Blue Cross correspondence. So please make sure you include that when you're sending a chair back in, and that has that information either on it. You can either call them or send them a fax and make sure that that information is included. I'm checking with them with regards to encrypted email. So I'll put this in the bulletin when I have an official answer from ECO, whether encrypted email could be used for this process as well. But unfortunately, you can't use regular email because personal information is on it and it's not secure. The manuals will be updated as well. So all of these changes don't take place until January 31st, 2022. So all of the PLs I just went over and everything, those will be what comes out January 31st. So the manuals for K, L, WM, WP will all be updated with the new processes. Just take note that instead of a single Z manual for recycle, it's divided into two sections. So the ZN section is for new purchase and repairs. So more specifically for vendors that purchase new and do repairs. And then the ZR manual is specific to the recycle vendor. So that's where you learn about how to do an internal transfer, how to do a recycle out, that kind of thing. So have a look at those changes. Manual for seating and the APL, so X, will all be updated as well. I haven't been talking about seating just because they're not part of the recycle program, but they are part of this transition. So just to make sure you're aware, basically anything that has not been transferred to Blue Cross is getting transferred in this next transition. So these will all be available on the Blue Cross website as well as the AADL website. Unless you're a pilot authorizer starting December 6th, you will have access to the manuals on December 6th, just on the Blue Cross website. Important dates coming up. The pilot, as I just mentioned, is December 6th to January 21st. We've extended it just because of the Christmas break and also because of the complexities of this phase. We need more time to make sure we test everything. On December 13th, Alberta Blue Cross will be doing a demonstration on actually how to use the Blue Cross system, so more specific than what their last presentation was. So that's on December 13th. Bulletin 124 gives you the link for that session. January 4th, you need to have all 1250s and 1251s postmarked by that date so that we have time to make sure that we can get through the mail system, get to AADL, and make sure we can get it entered before we go into the blackout period. So in January, though, you'll still be able to do assessments. You can still do trials with the new vendors because we won't have transitioned over. And we are looking at the possibility of possibly starting some searches with the recycle vendor as well in January. So watch for upcoming bulletins for that. January 16th to 30th, we go into a blackout for all authorizations and claims. So they cannot be entered in AADL or in Blue Cross. The only thing that we can make sure that we still process is anything palliative. So if you have a client that requires something palliative during the blackout, please submit it to AADL during that time. We can't enter it in the system, but we will process it manually to make sure that the client gets what they need during that time. Then January 31st, we go live. So all sessions will be recorded and the Q&As will be provided. As I mentioned, Bulletin 124 has the link from the ABC session November 15th and the Q&A. Bulletin 125 has session 1 link and the Q&As from that session. And then last week's session number 2 and this session number 3 will all be in upcoming bulletins. So they're not out yet. Watch for upcoming bulletins that will provide you the links, and we'll have Q&As from all the questions from last week and this week on there. So just in closing, we really appreciate this is a lot of change that we're going through, and your questions have been invaluable for us to ensure that we can support you as best we can through this transition. So please go ahead and put your questions in the chat box. I'm just going to end the session and we can carry on with the questions. Just give me a minute. Okay, just scrolling back. What is the difference between heavy duty and high weight? So basically it's the weight capacity. So over 250 to 350 would be heavy duty, and anybody above 350 pounds would be high weight. So that's how they're differentiated. The forms will be available on the ABC site once everything is switched over. Yes, so on January 31st, everything will become available. So all the forms, the manual updates will all be ready for January 31st. The AADL website will also be updated, and what we will provide is some of them will have links to the same forms on the Blue Cross system, but they'll all be available there. Do PEDS category B and C go through recycle first? So no, so pediatric Bs and Cs still, you wouldn't have to go through recycle first. You can just trial directly with the client's preferred vendor and order new. What we'll do is we'll review this in a few months and see what we have in the recycle pool. Right now, we don't have a lot in the recycle pool, so we chose not to do that at this time, but it might be something we would look at down the road. Under old manual, an AADL owned chair that was greater than 6 years did not need a QFR, but still needed an assessment by a vendor to deem the chair not cost effective to repair. Under the new manual, a wheelchair greater than 5 years will not need a QFR, but will still need the same assessment by a vendor to determine not cost effective to repair. So yeah, as my comment was, you shouldn't be just changing a chair just because their 5 years is up. You should be, obviously it's going in because it possibly needs repairs, or if the client's changed and you need to order a different style of chair, it's just that you can do it after 5 years without having to do a QFR. But the vendor is going to check to see if they can do repairs on that chair, and they can approve a certain amount of repairs, but over a certain amount, they need to get approval from AADL to do those repairs. So that's when we would maybe catch that that chair isn't worth fixing anymore, and then we would recommend that it be replaced. Is the SR45 still only quick ship with limited specs? Good question. The specs will be all on the manufacturer's website, so nothing's changed with regards to the specs. So it should all be the same as it was. Just to clarify, category B and C chairs are not going through recycle, so we would proceed with trialing ordering chairs through the preferred vendor. Yes, so in ABC, once we submit the auth for B and C chair with the eligibility form, does it go under review pending, or is it approved immediately so long as they aren't over quantity? So yeah, so in the Blue Cross system, you get an immediate answer for your authorization request. If the client's eligible and everything else is submitted properly, you will know right away whether it's approved. And then at that point, you can continue and work out the details of the specifics of the order that you need with that client. And it's not until the vendor claims are the specifics of that order as part of that they will claim off that authorization. So your authorization is very simple. It's just basically saying, yes, this client needs a category B chair or a category A chair. It's when the vendor goes to claim that they have access to that pool of money that's allocated for those different categories. Will AADL still be sending approval denial letters for wheelchairs? No, all of that will stop. So you will have an immediate answer with Blue Cross that your authorization is approved or denied. Is Ecomedical the recycle vendor for lifts as well as wheelchairs? Yeah, so they actually have the entire recycle program. So they'll have lifts. They have beds through a different contract as well. They'll have pediatric equipment, power chairs. All of those things are with the recycle vendor at Eco. Are tilt and space manual wheelchairs, including backrest and headrest, coming through recycle? If so, are the backrest headrests being recycled also? So we generally get all the chairs coming back without the back and headrest, and we're going to look to see, because I am getting that comment with regard to infection control. So we do get them returned to recycle because they are government-owned property. But if we are going to recycle it out, then obviously we would be putting on a new back and headrest to make sure that it meets all those standards. So they should be like brand new. Need to increase the benchmark pricing for overhead lifts. The new Arjo has a huge upcharge, and that is the only one vendors want to sell. Yeah, so our pricing didn't change for the price for the lifts at this time. You may need to research some of the other choices that are out there and request your vendors to be looking at other options. You can drive some of that change yourself. If clients don't want the Arjo Huntley and you want a different product, then you know, maybe the vendors would start carrying it. So have a look at some other choices as well. Any consideration of funding for standing frames for younger adults with muscular dystrophy or cerebral palsy? So the determination for 7 for the mobile standing frames was actually determined by a group of pediatric therapists that were part of the group that determined when we put those products on the system. And, you know, they're expensive items, and they're primarily meant for when clients are in a school setting, that kind of thing. And you know, they're going to grow a lot when they're younger than that. And so the product is likely not going to last for 4 years because they're going to keep growing. So for several reasons, that's why it was put as 7 years. But that was actually determined by pediatric therapists. So we do get that request, but that's the reasoning behind it. Do you submit a QFR at the same time as you submit the authorization, before you submitted the QFR and waited for a response? So with Blue Cross, the QFR is actually a type of authorization. And so you would submit the QFR in as your stream. So you would submit in your QFR for your category A wheelchair or your lift or whatever, and it would pend until you get an answer, and then you would be able to proceed with ordering. And what happens with a QFR is you don't have to then submit another authorization. If it's approved, Blue Cross manually processes it to flip it to no longer a QFR, but an authorization for the product that you want. Do we still need to have the client sign the client declaration and upload it, or do the eligibility forms replace it? So no, the eligibility forms do not replace the client declaration. This is in addition to. Every authorization requires a client declaration to be uploaded. You can still use the same client declaration for different authorizations, but you still need to upload one with every authorization. And then with wheelchairs, you do need to submit the eligibility forms as well. And for the, as I said, the only eligibility form that needs to be signed by the client is the grant one. Otherwise, you have to sign all the eligibility forms. When do we need to stop sending faxed authorizations? So we've got January 4th as our deadline for postmarking everything. And that's the date we're kind of sticking with, but we probably can still accept faxes that week, like till the 7th. But after that, like if we can't handle the load of what we've got that's in the mail to get processed before the 16th, then like we'll have no choice but to send it back to you. So you're taking a risk if you send us anything after January 4th. Like I said, if we can manage it, we will try to process it before. But if we can't, then it is going to get sent back to you, and you'll have to wait till January 31st to submit onto the Blue Cross system. Is the blackout period for all authorizations on Blue Cross? So no, it's just for this recycle phase 5 section. So the recycle products and seating will be in blackout. So small bathing, toileting, everything was on benchmark are still available and do not go into blackout. Are there links on ABC for the spec on manufacturers' websites? No, at this point, they're on the manufacturer's website only. Will we be the one who verify the details of the new specs, or is the vendor completing the specs? So it's up to the authorizers and vendors to determine how you want to do that. AADL does no longer oversee you completing those specs. You're ultimately responsible for what you order, but who actually fills it out is between you and your vendor to work that out. How long does the vendor have to claim for a BC wheelchair following ABC approval? Good question. Is it 6 months? I'll have to check. I will get that answer for you. For auths marked pending, like prior approval items, how will we know when they are approved or denied? So yeah, like I said, you will get an email from Blue Cross when a decision's been made, and they'll just tell you that a decision's been made. You can go on the Blue Cross online portal and see the answer. And it'll be done through email. If we have to order a new wheelchair, we don't have to submit the wheelchair specifics. The vendor will do this. So when you order a wheelchair, so your authorization only includes the authorization type. So you're ordering a category A wheelchair or a category A tilt and space with the backrest and whatever. So you order your authorization, but the actual order comes between you and the vendor and the client to work out the specifics. So you have to know about the specifics because clearly you're the professional that decides what the client needs and what's required on that chair. But who fills out the specs on that and completes the order? Like I said, that's up to you guys. And then that's what the vendor would claim off of when they submit a claim. Are we contacted when the auth changes from pending? Yeah, no, you will be notified by email. How long is a signed client declaration form valid? My understanding is it's valid indefinitely unless the client puts an end date on it or cancels it at any point. So you can continue to use that same declaration for multiple authorizations. So the vendor does submit the claim, though ultimately not the authorizer. So I'm trusting the vendor with the specs we discussed. So yes, I mean, you need to follow up with your client after they receive the equipment to make sure that it's working and is set up properly and that it's satisfactory. So that's at that point you would recognize if there was something done wrong. So yes, the vendors are required to order it as per your specs. That's why you need to make sure you're on top of what's being ordered because that is your responsibility. And if there was any errors with regards to their claim, then we would also be looking at that post audit to making sure that what the vendors claim and what the clients get is accurate. Okay, we got through the questions. If you have any other questions, please don't hesitate to email me at any time. I will include these all in an upcoming bulletin. Thank you so much. Awesome questions. Jen, did you want to say anything?
Other than thank you, no, but I know Chris had some clarification. He was going to jump in and add some clarity around one of the questions that you weren't sure about.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and I apologize. I was having some issues with my mic. Is that coming through now?
Yeah, you are.
Yep, can hear you.
Okay. Just to answer the question about how long does the vendor have to claim for a wheelchair following Blue Cross approval? So that's determined by the authorization term. And it will be displayed on the Blue Cross portal how long the authorization is actually in place. And I believe for the four wheelchairs, it's actually a 5-year period that it will sit open. But of course, we're expecting that the claim will be submitted sooner than that. And yeah, connecting to that other their most recent question, it will be like the order will no longer be mediated by ADL. So the specs, so your authorization is confirmation that client is eligible, meets the clinical and program criteria for that kind of wheelchair. And then what actually gets claimed is between the client, vendor, and the authorizer. And we are requiring vendors to keep a record of what was ordered, including confirmation of the specs that were ordered, and then the authorizer is responsible to work with the client to make sure that those specs are appropriate before they're confirmed with the vendor. But so if there was ever an issue with the specs that were delivered by a vendor, one of the first things that Blue Cross would ask for is, okay, can you give me the record of confirmation of your order? So it's correct that it's not captured in the claim system or reviewed by AADL up front, but it is documentation we required to be kept on file. And yeah, and would certainly be part of a review if there was an issue or a random post-claim review after the claim goes through.
So there's another question. So specs don't need to be sent to ABC. So no, they don't. You submit your authorization, you submit your client declaration, you upload the client declaration, you upload the eligibility summary, but you don't need to upload the specs. You work with the vendor directly on that part of it, and then you just work, the vendor gets the specs from you for them to be able to order. Okay. So thank you, Chris, for clarifying. I should have known that answer. Anyways, thank you so much, everybody. Watch for upcoming bulletins for any other questions and answers, and a link so that your coworkers know if they weren't able to see today's session that they will be coming up in the next couple weeks. So thank you so much, everybody. Have a good day.
Thank you. Bye.